Hi, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hello, welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm here today with Laurenn Mones. She goes by the Fermenting Fairy. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you. Appreciate being here.
Thank you. Likewise. So I'd love to hear, for my audience who may not be as familiar with you, tell us a little bit about what you do and a little bit about your story.
Okay, sure. Well, I own a company called Fermenting Fairy, and we manufacture, produce, ferment some of the best raw living foods on the planet. So we do a wild fermentation, and it's sort of rare these days to find a company who is doing a wild fermentation, which is how our ancestors used to do it. But, now with all the commercialized food and products and profit over people, we find that a lot of the fermented food companies are like skipping steps and cheating in certain ways, but we do it really like how fermentation is supposed to be done. So
that's amazing. So I have two questions for you. One, how did you get into that? Like, what made you decide to start that? And two, tell us a little bit about how it's different. Like, how has the process changed from what our ancestors used to do? And what do you do, or what is most important to you in your processing?
So, well, initially, like I knew nothing about fermentation for most of my life, other than I joke around usually when I say the only fermented foods I knew about for 35 years of my life is the sauerkraut that on the corner of a New York City hot dog stand is serving up.
Right.
That stuff that they take out with like the thongs and
right. On a food truck.
Yeah, it looks like slush or like dirt or something. I don't know. But anyway, it's quite tasty, but that's not right. It's not like real sauerkraut, even though that's what they call it. But so I knew nothing about fermented foods for most of my life. And then I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in my mid-30s. And so that was about 8 years ago. And that came out of the blue. Throughout my life, I was on and off sick. I had viruses. I had, a lot of stomach issues. I had recurring UTIs. So throughout my whole life, I was like on and off sick, on antibiotics. But then in my mid-30s, it really hit me, and it hit me hard. And but at the time, I was racing triathlons, and I was really healthy. Like if you saw me,
right,
people would say, "Wow, she's thin, and she's got an athletic body, and she's fit, and she eats healthy." But I was like really eating a lot of the workout, like protein drinks and the energy bars and stuff to just get me through my triathlon, workouts and races. So, so on the outside,
great point. By the way, I just want to, because people do judge a book by its cover, and what looks healthy externally doesn't necessarily mean it is internally. So
yes, exactly. And it's such a thing nowadays to like look at someone on Instagram and say, wow, she's like got a beautiful body. And, but then like, how does she feel? Like if you knew her personally, how does she actually feel inside her body? And that was me. I felt, increasingly bad. And I was getting sicker and sicker as, the days were going on. And so how it sort of manifested in my body as going to the bathroom, pooping, a couple times a day, then 3-4 times a day. And then I started having really watery diarrhea, and it would stop me from doing anything, pretty much from the time I would wake up till about like 1 in the afternoon, because all I had to do was like run to the bathroom all the time.
Oh,
So I was losing weight. I couldn't, like, I would eat and it would come right out. It's called rapid transit. So it's definitely like a medical terminology for like, it's just, there's nothing being absorbed. Yeah. So, I mean, like you can see is my salad is in the toilet bowl. It was so weird because like you could see, like I wasn't breaking down my food, which is really serious, like serious stuff. So I was malnourished and losing weight very quickly. And I resisted going to get a colonoscopy, but eventually I had to because I started having accidents. So I would leave my house because I still had to work, like I had to support myself. I was a single woman back then. And I had to support myself. So I would go to work, like a total zombie, but I would still make it there. But I was having accidents. So I'd have to bring a pair of underwear and toilet paper everywhere I would go, pair of pants everywhere. So it was, so then I said, I can't live this way. So I have to get a colonoscopy and see what's really going on. And they diagnosed me with Crohn's disease. So
wow.
that's
Not fun.
No, that was the beginning of my health journey, where I was like, I couldn't believe I had a lifelong disease, that these doctors are telling me, because I was like generally a healthy person, I was never someone who would have a lifelong disease and have to be on medication. I would never have that kind of that visual of me. I was always like, I would always get through whatever I had to get through. So it was really such a shocker when the doctors told me that. And so I did take the medication, went home and decided to change certain things in my life. And but I found
but before you start, I'm sorry, tell us a little bit about what they recommended for you. Like, what medication did they put you on? What were their suggestions?
Okay. Yeah. So, well,
sorry.
No, it's interesting because coming right out of the colonoscopy when I'm still medicated and feeling very groggy, not sure like which way's up or down. And, and then the doctor telling me and my fiance at the time, who was very non-supportive and part of the whole issue, which we could get into a little bit later, but was telling me that I would have to be on this very expensive medication. It was $2,400 a month, and that insurance didn't cover it because it was a new medication, and I don't think it had gone through like all the FDA approvals and stuff like that. So I was put on that, and also an immune suppressor. So an immune suppressor and steroids. Wow. So 3 different medications and very, very high doses of steroids to calm the inflammation.
And did they say how long they thought this was going to need to be?
Oh, lifelong. These were lifelong medications.
Very expensive and very high dose of medication for life. Okay.
Oh yeah. And don't worry about it. Insurance
sounds like a great solution. All right.
And also suppressing your immune system.
Yeah. Not good.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't make sense to me, but I didn't know any of this. Like when I went home and I was like, I don't even know what Crohn's is, even though oddly, my uncle has it. So, but that was never.
It tends to have a genetic component.
Yeah, exactly. It's a genetic component. Yeah. So, so I did take the medication for about a few months. And during those few months, I realized I did a lot of research into what Crohn's really is and how it affects my body. And it's called an inflammatory bowel disease. So it's so funny because like I feel like a lot of these medical terminologies or medical diagnoses don't have the actual problem in the name, but oddly Crohn's and ulcerative colitis do. They're both inflammatory bowel disease. So that told me it's not some odd like bacteria or a parasite that's like eating away at my body and trying to kill me. And no, it's inflammation. It's inflammatory. So so I knew inflammation. I mean, I was a gymnast when I was young. I broke my elbow. That was inflammation.
Yeah, me too.
I have a headache, that's inflammation. Like it suddenly like clicked for me that, okay, that's actually awesome that it's just inflammation in my gut. That means I can heal it. It's not some foreign, like strange thing,
Totally.
So that's when it started clicking with me. And I said, if this is truly inflammation, then why am I taking drugs to suppress my immune system when my immune system is exactly what fights inflammation?
Right.
It either increases it or decreases it along with the gut.
Sometimes it increases it temporarily in order to reduce it, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So
it broke your elbow, it created inflammation.
Yeah, you need inflammation, right?
Protective spot. Yeah.
It's necessary. It's a flag. It's a red flag that goes up in the body and says, okay, there's something wrong. There's an imbalance. So when I realized that, I said, okay, why am I taking these medications then? Why do I need to suppress my immune system? And also, why do I have inflammation? And that is key. And that is something that the medical establishment does not tell people and does not ask people and does not, dig deeper into why is there inflammation in the gut? No, let's just suppress everything and give you steroids so that you have a whole downstream of other problems, instead of getting to the root cause of why there's inflammation. And there was inflammation because I had an imbalance in my gut. I had leaky gut, and I had to bring my microbiome back into balance. Sure. And once I did that, the inflammation healed. I got off all my medications within, the 4 months or so within diagnosis. I said, screw this. I'm not going to do this anymore. Threw them out cold turkey, didn't even like titrate off or anything.
Wow.
And I had doctors tell me that they'll never see me again. They fired me as a patient.
Right.
No, and and said to me, well, don't come back to me when you have rectal cancer, because you're going to get rectal cancer or colon cancer from not taking these immune suppressants.
These people who are supposed to be taking care of your health, they're giving you a prognosis of basically
cancer. Yeah, thank you.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Instilling fear and despair, and this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was fortunate enough to have my head on straight and to not have, white coat. I don't know what you call it, but like the bowing down to the
devotion and
devotion. Yeah.
Idolatry of white coats. Yeah.
White coat supremacy, whatever. I didn't have that. Yeah. I just know that they're normal human beings and they make mistakes and like, they don't quite know what Crohn's really is. So then I dove deep into, what's going on in the gut, what's going on in the microbiome. And I was reading through a book called The Paleo Approach. Okay. And it's by Sarah Ballantyne, and it's a wonderful approach to diet for autoimmune diseases.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was reading through that, and it's like a 500 or 600 page book. And it had a little paragraph that's like 5 sentences that talked about fermented foods and how they could be good for autoimmune diseases, which Crohn's is thought to be autoimmune, but maybe a little bit later we can touch on my opinion about that. But
hear it.
Yeah. So it's supposedly an autoimmune disease. So that I put myself on this diet, this paleo approach that is supposed to heal a lot of autoimmune diseases, and saw this paragraph of fermented foods. And I said, well, let me go try some sauerkraut, because that's really what I knew fermented foods to be. Sure. and I bought a jar at the
New York food trucks.
Yeah, New York food truck, but like the real stuff. I wanted to buy like the healthy stuff.
Yeah.
So took a bite, my first bite, and it just like brought my body to life. Like I felt like this surge of energy, and I liken it to like a Kundalini Awakening. Like it awoke some like divine spark in me.
You felt that instantly.
I felt it instantly. Yeah. And I've heard
connection.
Yeah, it was a connection to, inner communication. I think there was two things happening. One is like, really, it was like the divine, like saying, okay, this is your path, like, wake up. This is a sign, follow it. And also, it's living food. And I was like really dead inside because I was dying. I mean, we're all dying, but I was like I was dying faster than I needed to be because I was so sick. Yeah. So it was this living food that had living bacteria, living probiotics, living beings that are for life, that really want you to live and survive, because then they live and survive. And, and it was just this like beautiful connection that I had with these living beings, that it just brought me to life for a moment. And it woke me up. And then like the most magical thing is, for the next couple of days, I continued to eat the sauerkraut, and I had more formed stools than I've ever had, like for like years before that.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that quickly you noticed a difference.
Yeah, it really, really worked well with my body, like in a very, very fast way. So yeah, that was like my I guess my introduction to real healthy, like wild fermented foods, and how like incredibly healing they are for me, and for other people.
Sure. So then what got you into producing them, building a business around it, and working with others?
Yeah, I knew that I had something really good, but I had to heal my body first. So it wasn't right off the bat that I was going to start a business. It took years, actually.
Usually does.
I mean, I was really sick. Like I'm talking like it was like this easy transition.
No.
I was really, really sick. And
Crohn's is not a joke. And even people who have a very mild form of Crohn's, and I have people very close to me who, have had Crohn's of varying degrees. And even in the mildest cases, it is not a joke. It can be really debilitating and really, really unpleasant. So
yes,
I have some tremendous empathy for what you endured. So
yeah, thank you. And it was not an easy path. And I like to tell people that, throwing away my medications, and then, I don't want to make it seem like I just kind of coasted into healing. I didn't. It was very, very hard. And I also broke up with my fiance. So we ended our relationship in the middle of all of this, because I knew that our relationship had something to do with the manifestation of the disease, because it was very toxic. And and
a lot of connection between the stress and we all manifest it differently, but there's a book, The Body Keeps the Score. I don't know.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah. And it's very true. We all, our body really manifests things that even if we're not aware, we've stored, the trauma. So
yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And that was it. Exactly. It was like my body was holding on to this stress. I didn't need the emotional stress. I had to really heal myself physically. And so, so I don't know where I was going with that.
So the journey from healing yourself and
and then going into the business. Yeah. So I started figuring out that sauerkraut really worked for my body. So then I wanted to make it at home. And I was watching YouTube videos, and I read books, and I taught myself how to make it. And the first batch I threw out. It was so scary to me. And I know a lot of people go through this because we were so indoctrinated to believe that like something sitting on the counter for so long is
I'm guilty of this.
Yeah. It's like rotting.
People used to eat eggs without even refrigerating them.
I know.
You know, and actually in Europe, most people still don't refrigerate eggs. Like that's such an American, like mass production type of, you know, custom. And I'm so guilty of that. Like I see it like a day past, you know, and then if I make a mistake, I'm like, oh no, am I going to die? And and it's really just, we're so far removed from natural organic processes of growing food and farming and cooking that most people just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to fermentation, it's like you see something, you know, sitting on the counter and it's scary. So I like threw that out. It sat on my counter for 8 days, totally threw it out. I was so scared to eat it.
So, like, all that work.
I know, it was such a shame. Like people hear that and they're like, oh my God, what a waste. But trust me, it needed to happen. I needed to figure that out.
Part of the process, part of the
process. But I did it again. And this time I forced myself to eat it and I loved it. And I could not believe that, like, something that came from one thing is now a completely different thing, and it's healing me. And it has like these beautiful microorganisms that I've spent my whole life trying to kill. And now I'm actually cultivating them and then eating them, and they're healing me. It was just such a, like, a complete paradigm shift. Such a, like, a flop on my head that I don't want to, you know, like germs aren't bad. And they're not even, like, the whole germ theory is so, it's so strong and it's so evident, especially now. It's
it's so I've actually done several podcasts discussing germ versus terrain theory, and I'm not one of those people who subscribes to one or the other. I actually think the truth lies in a nuanced combination of the two. And I think that, but more importantly, I think the big problem is that we know so little. And, you know, they put forth, they are theories, they're still called theories. It's not, you know, the germ fact and the terrain fact, you know, they're both theories that have been presented. And instead of acknowledging that they may be a more advanced or evolved you know, version of those theories, they are still theoretical models that are used to explain something that we actually know very, very little about.
Yeah. And we know very little about health. I mean, we know very little about the human body and what makes it thrive. I mean, there's so many different thought processes out there that we don't really know. And we have to just, like, individualize it, you know, like right now for me, eating, you know, animal meats and animal fats feels the best. But, you know, long ago I was like strict plant-based vegan. And so that felt good to me then, you know. It just, it's very, it has to be malleable, I think. But the germ theory, you know, for me, I grew up with that, like, very, very strongly. My dad's a doctor. You know, I have several sisters that are doctors. And it was always like, wash your hands and Lysol and cleaning and stuff like that. And lots and lots of antibiotics. So, you know, so I was really, like, well versed in trying to kill any kind of germ.
Right. I find it so funny because in the past few years, all these, like, you know, very I don't know, you know, spiritual moms were like, only organic products, and then they suddenly all rushed out to buy all the Lysol possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Cleaned off the shelf. Like, what happened? I thought that was toxic.
No, not right now. There's a deadly virus happening. Oh my gosh.
There's a germ. Gotta clean it.
Yeah, germ. Yeah, and all the health food stores too. Like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
Like, people are coming here to heal themselves from whatever's out there. And yet you're making us wear masks and, you know, getting the jab and all that stuff. And that just makes no sense. None of this makes any sense, really. But so I started teaching myself fermentation. You know, after that one batch of sauerkraut, I completely fell in love with it and was like, wow, this is the most amazing process I've ever witnessed in my life, and started messing around with kombucha and kefir and kimchi and all of them. I was making all of them. And I was giving them away too. So I was giving them to some friends. I was living in Santa Monica at the time.
Ah,
And
I lived for years. I recently moved, but yeah.
oh yeah. Oh, so maybe you know Bhakti Yoga Shala?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Bhakti Yoga
Yeah.
Shala. Okay. So Govindas is the owner of Bhakti Yoga Shala, and he's got ulcerative colitis. So
I used to live right close to there, but then I moved like closer to Venice, still in Santa Monica. But yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I knew he had ulcerative colitis, so I gave him some of my ferments, and he came back a couple weeks later. He's like, these actually made me feel good, so I want to buy more. And of course, I just gave him some, and he really really loved them. And I wasn't planning at all in starting a company. It was just I was an occupational therapist, so I didn't need like a job or anything.
Oh, okay.
So, but I came in one day to take his yoga class, and there was like 75 sardine people packed overlapping mat. And he said, I just want to say one thing. You better bring me more jars of your sauerkraut. And he said it across the entire class. And everyone turned to me and said, I want to buy, I want to buy your sauerkraut, because he loved it. So of course, whatever he loved, everyone else wanted. So I had all these people wanting to buy my products all of a sudden. And that's kind of how it started. I started.
Amazing.
And I got a booth at the Brentwood Farmers Market and got a business license from Santa Monica, and then it just lifted up from there.
That's amazing. And when was that? When did you?
That was in 2017.
Wow, that is so awesome. So something that you did just as a gift, because you wanted to share, because you were so excited about it. And, you wanted to help someone, became your new business. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was, there was no intention. I call myself the accidental CEO because I knew nothing about, I always worked for someone else. I knew nothing about running my own business, nothing about marketing. I mean, especially in the food business. The food business is like a whole other animal, when it comes to developing a business. So
all sorts of regulations that you're up
all sorts of, right. I mean, the label itself, you've got to, you have to have a PhD in labeling.
Yeah, you do.
Just to be able to label correctly. So
you need to be able to sift through all the lies, essentially, because there's just so much, in the true sense of the word, misinformation in what the labels contain. It's designed to misinform.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it's the FDA, who supposedly oversees the labeling. It's no one even pays attention to that, and they don't enforce it at all. So what you see on the label is almost always incorrect.
It seems like they only enforce it when it goes against the healing benefits of humanity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're starting to crack down a little bit on fermented foods because, of course, ferments are helping to heal the world naturally. And so of course they're going to start digging their nose into the fermented food world pretty soon.
Oh, that's awful. It's so terrible. So tell me a little bit about what you discovered because you started off really as kind of a self-experimentation is what it sounds like. So I'd love to hear about your process. One, when it was just a personal experimentation, were there things you found that were working for you, that didn't work for you, that just personal preferences, maybe you didn't like? And then talk to me a little bit about how once you start to make it a business, I mean, I know you're still a small business, but it's it's a larger scale production. You're no longer just batching one for you, right? So what were some of the things that became more important to you? What were some of the obstacles and challenges that came up for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, personally, do you want me to talk about just fermented foods or anything that helps?
Yeah.
So I would say, the fermented foods really, really helped me because they helped to repopulate my gut. That was completely destroyed by everything, like years and years of antibiotics. I was on antidepressants in my 20s, so that definitely played a role.
Yeah.
And then also,
Were you on a bunch? Do you know which one, or do you mind sharing?
I was on, I forget. It's one of the more popular ones, though. It wasn't Prozac, but it was, what was the name?
Effexor, Lexapro. It was an SSRI though.
It was an SSRI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which we know now.
Your gut, because you have more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that definitely contributed, and also just like not knowing anything about my gut or the microbiome, because we're talking now, we all know about it, but even 5 years prior to today, no one was talking about the microbiome.
No.
Really, no one. And no one was talking about probiotics. I've been taking probiotics for 20, 25 years.
Wow.
Because early on in I think it was my early 20s, I got into raw diet, just like raw vegan diet.
Right.
And what's her name? Donna Gates. I did the Donna Gates diet, the body ecology diet, and I was getting colonics and I was taking probiotics. I was like healthy, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like doing things that I thought were healthy.
Right.
But I didn't understand what was truly happening. And so it really didn't have like that much of effect on me. But I was focusing on healing myself, and then I got sick. And I think what really helped was the fermented foods, and then also dealing with or handling or embracing a lot of the emotional stuff behind the disease, like emotional ties to the Crohn's, because there was a lot of and this is my opinion, and this is what I see in people who come to me one-on-one, and this is also what I see just, I guess, watching people, on social media and who are sick and who are on healing journeys, is that there's always an emotional component to every illness, especially the chronic ones, especially the ones that have been around for years and years and years and years. There's always an emotional component. And I had to face what that was. And for me, it looked like needing more attention from specifically my family. And I think there's always like a family tie to this, like how we were raised, what didn't we get, what did we need that we didn't get, and that we're now manifesting something that, we can get that, but it's in more of a manipulative way. You know what I mean? Yeah. So for me, it was like attention.
Psychology, they call it reparation. You're to repair what you didn't get as a child.
Yeah.
Recreate dynamics, seeking that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I didn't get the love that I needed. I didn't get the attention that I needed from my parents. And so here I am, I was living out in California while I was sick, and my whole family lived in New York. And so I felt very alone at times.
Sure.
And so anytime I would have a flare, I would beg them, to come out and take care of me.
Wow.
And they didn't. And they never did, actually, which was great for me. I mean, not at the time.
Right.
At the time,
it was a blessing in disguise, right?
Yeah, exactly. At the time, it was heartbreaking. But I realized that I'm not their obligation. They're not obligated to me anymore. I'm an adult, Again, just because they're my parents doesn't mean that they have to take care of me. It was like I needed to cut the umbilical cord. Yeah. I still needed something from them that I was not giving myself. Mm-hmm. And so
it's so profound, by the way. That's really profound, because I think a lot of people go through their whole lives, trying to seek whatever it is, it's, there's a lot of common threads for, I think, all people.
Yeah.
But, the thing that they think that they need from the specific people they think they need to get it from. And that, the reality is, well, it would be lovely for us to get that. And we all hope to get that. We need to figure out how to give it and provide it for ourselves, because ultimately, so we're left with at the end of the day, right?
That's what we're left with. Yeah. And our relationship to the divine, and that's what I had to cultivate, because I wanted someone else to come and take care of me. I wanted someone else to come and save me. And I put a lot of pressure on my family. I put a lot of pressure on my friends. I was always sick. And yes, I literally was sick, but also I was also getting something from being sick.
Right. Right.
I was getting attention.
I was letting yourself heal because you didn't want to let go of what you were getting as a result of being sick. Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, if I want to be really harsh about it, I liked being sick. I needed to be sick.
Wow.
Because otherwise, maybe my friends wouldn't come around so often. Maybe my family wouldn't call so often, So, it was huge.
And so honest. Was that hard for you to admit that to yourself, to face that? How did you come to that discovery?
Yeah, well, I had a friend come over who was kind of this guy who was interested in dating me, but again, I was sick often, and so it wasn't really attractive to him. He liked me a lot, but it was I used my illness all the time with him in a manipulative way. And he said to me one day, he's like, look, I got to be honest with you. What are you getting out of this? He's like, what are you getting out of being sick? And I was like, F you and blah, blah, blah. I threw him out of my house. And I just cried and I bawled because it was such an honest, it hit me and it hit my core that it was true. I said, oh my God, he is so right. And so I journaled and I meditated for days and weeks on that. I asked myself one question, and that was, what am I gaining from being sick?
Wow.
And so much came up, and it was mostly attention and love. So I knew that I had to turn that back on myself and give it to myself first.
Right.
Yeah. So I went into my own shell in such a way, I didn't talk to my friends as much, and I really didn't reach out to my family. And I sort of closed off the outer world. Sure. And I did a lot of just reaching down and more discoveries about what I needed. I wrote myself letters, I wrote little Laurenn letters, and I'm so sorry, but I know, and now I can release you, you're an adult and taking care of you, and you're fine now. And I really cut the cord in people that I was depending on. And I developed a major trust in the divine. I had to absolutely 100% unequivocally trust that I was going to be okay. And
wow. And can you talk a little bit about that process? Were you religious growing up? Is that something you discovered through this? And do you have a pivotal moment?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't religious at all growing up. I think I did have a belief where nature and everything in nature, including myself, is from a divine spark. We're all made from this beautiful godly energy. Yeah. So I don't know where I adopted that belief system, but I've always had it my whole life, especially nature. Nature's always been my refuge.
Wow.
So
you grow up in where did you grow up?
In New Jersey.
Oh, me too.
Not a lot. Oh, really? Where?
You grew up in New Jersey? I grew up in Englewood Cliffs.
Oh, wow. Rockaway, New Jersey.
Okay. Yeah. That's so funny. And then you moved to California, LA.
California. Yeah.
I lived in New York City, and then I moved to Santa Monica.
Oh, funny. Yeah. We've been following each other.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. So, we had lots of nature in New Jersey. And we had like a lake and a river. So that was always my like place to go and do some deep thinking and just play, by myself and talk to the fairies and
Right.
the imaginary fairies. um, so, so my relationship with, but I never really had that like 100% trust, like that I was going to be taken care of no matter what. No matter what happened. But I started to develop that because that was all I had. That was all I had to keep me from thinking that I was going to die. I mean, because there were moments where I was so sick that I could possibly just pass away, and maybe no one would even know. I mean, I wouldn't show up at work, so possibly they would figure that out at work. But it was really, it sounds sad, but it was this conviction that I developed by saying, if this is my time to die right now, I'm okay with it. If it's not, then I trust that I'll come through it. I will get through it.
Yeah.
And I always got through it. And now, like, from years and years of going through that, like, I can go through really, really intense, harsh periods and stress. And I just have this conviction that, when it's my time, it'll be that time.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I am fully safe and well taken care of, from myself and from the divine. So
Wow, that's amazing. And was that, it sounds like it was an evolving process. You didn't have like a moment, a light bulb moment. It was,
no, yeah, it was evolving, and I had to cultivate that, because that's what really, like, a physical illness, like, that's what the body is yearning for. It's yearning for your trust in the process, your trust in the body knowing exactly what it needs to do.
right.
And I had to keep trusting that. I like, it was, and that's what I say on my website. It's like, it's the path of the warrior, because it's very, very difficult when you are faced with this life or death situation where you feel like literally you might just you tip that edge and you're gone. That you trust, and it's all about, it's the surrender, and knowing that either way, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to work out just okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible that you were able to give that to yourself and, surrender and find that spiritual connection. I'd love to hear about your process of creating the business. Let's start with the actual process of the fermentation, the products, and how, what was different about making it for yourself versus, now producing it on a larger scale, as well as some of the things that you realized about, because we have a lot of packaged fermented foods now, and they're not all the same, right? So
yeah. Well, it was interesting because I started at a farmer's market, like legit. That was like my legit start date, was at a farmer's market. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. At least I got to the point where I packaged them, but I didn't have labels or anything like that. But people started buying my products, and I was like, it was so strange to me that I had people coming back for more. And it took me months to realize that, like, this could actually be a business. Cause I still felt, even at the farmer's market, I still felt like I was just selling it to friends. It didn't really occur to me yet that I was moving into, like, a legitimate business. But then I just started making them at a larger scale and figuring out how to go from like 5 bottles of kefir to 20. And figuring out how to put a UPC label on a UPC code on the label, and doing, like, it really was little steps and learning as I go. I mean, that was just like, I couldn't do it any other way. I didn't know anyone in the food business. I had no connections.
yeah.
So I couldn't really reach out to anyone and be like, hey, how do I do this? Or, hey, how do
Right.
so I Googled everything. I mean, I just
Wow.
read, I mean, I didn't even know about margins. I didn't know how to set prices. So I learned as I went along, and like, again, like this is really my path, because I felt like there was this energy behind me all the way.
Amazing.
I made mistakes and stuff like that, but now,
Yeah.
yeah, lots of mistakes,
Journey. Yeah.
but thankfully not anything major that would tank us. It was all like just little mistakes here and there that we learn and you redo, and do it better. So now we're in Florida. We moved to Florida, and now we have our own commercial kitchen. So we went from sharing commercial kitchens and like renting tiny spaces, or renting like a table at a kitchen when there's 20 other food companies, hustling and bustling together. That was LA. The
Right.
LA food scene is a trip, or the small companies, it's a trip because we all like share the same space, and it's like always vying for more space, and you have to store your stuff at home and then bring it into the kitchen on the days that you have scheduled. And it's just crazy there. So
Yeah.
we went from that to now we have our own kitchen, and I have 3 employees plus my husband is on board. He's working, as we're both co-owners of the company now.
Awesome.
And yeah, we're producing a lot of products, and that has been one of the most challenging pieces was going from a few bottles to now thousands of bottles, and how not to lose the integrity of the product, or the quality of the product. That's the hardest part.
Sure.
And I believe that's why a lot of people don't start fermentation companies, because it's romantic, and it could be like a cool thing to have a fermentation company, but in the end it's truly, truly super complicated, because you have living products that change with like a 2-degree difference of temperature in the kitchen. You could have like a completely botched batch of like whatever you're making. So there's a lot of like variables. It's not just like baking cookies, right? Baking cookies, you have a recipe, but there's a lot of variables in fermentation. So
Because it's a living organism.
it's a living organism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the product changes all the time, which is why we're still like a handcrafted product, because we do make everything by hand. We don't have any machines in the kitchen. So we label everything, we pour everything, we make everything by hand. So it's very labor intensive.
Sure.
But that's the way I like it, because it feels a little, I like to keep the intimacy with the products more. Like when you bring in a machine, it interrupts that intimacy, and I think it changes the quality of the product.
Do a lot of companies use the machines, or is that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're using a lot of machines.
And how does it change the quality? Like, what is that? What's the
I
impact?
mean, well, it's just, it's a machine, first of all. Like it's like the whole conveyor thing. Like you put the bottle on, and it goes through the sterilization, and then it comes back, and then it goes through the filling, and then it comes back, and it goes through the labeling, and then it's just like there's nothing wrong with that, and
Right.
expediting that.
Sure.
I just feel like it interrupts the intimacy of the person creating the food, and also creating like the packaged food. I have this because I'm drinking it. And then to the customer, like we like to keep things really intimate, really small, like small batch.
Right.
And everything is in control. So we're an online company. So we don't ship to stores and leave it in the store's hands to put on the shelf. We don't do that anymore. We used to, but now we're fully online. Now we go from our kitchen, we make everything from scratch. We're doing everything like with the bottling. and then we ship it off to the customer. So it's 100, it's like 100% except when FedEx gets it in our hands. Whereas a lot of companies are doing co-packers.
Right.
So the co-packing industry is huge right now. I mean, they're just having a blast, these co-packers. And these are people who, these are companies who take other people's recipes legally, you know, they're given the recipes and they create the products for the company. Sometimes, I mean, I would say probably the majority of the products that you see in the health food store, or any store, are never made by the actual company. And I know this because I've talked to a lot of startup food companies where they say, I've actually never made my product. I just created the recipe and I gave it to a co-packer and the co-packer makes it.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. Legit. Yeah. Yeah. You just come up with a recipe and give it to the co-packer and they make it. I mean, that's what all of your makeup, your skincare, it's all co-packers. No one's doing it like by themselves, except if you're super small artisan. But
that's really crazy to think about, because I think when you were talking about the intimacy of the production, you know, there is something like when you're saying before about how little we know about health and how personal it is and how, you know, unique each body and, you know, all of us are. There is, this is going to sound very woo-woo, but I know in terms of like quantum physics, there's tangible evidence to support this, that, you know, the relationship that one has when they create something, there is energy that gets put into that.
yes.
And you lose that when you just, you know, kind of depersonalize it and ship it off to a.
Yeah. I mean, a co-packer, they don't give a flying about your product. They have so many.
They probably don't know much about the product.
They don't know anything about it.
They don't know what it's supposed to do, what the result is supposed to be. They
exactly.
just following a formula.
Right. And you have, and it's more like an assembly line at these co-packers. Right. And so like you're having people who know nothing about,
you know what one person is doing versus the other.
Right. At the beginning. So yeah, so it's like you lose the intimacy. And I have, you know, so many people who taste my products and they're like, wow, like I can feel the energy. Like I can feel, they say sometimes because they know me from Instagram or something, that they can feel my energy in it, even, you know, like
that.
Yeah. So, and it's true. It's true. Like, you know, you can feel like the, what do they call it? The bhav, like in yoga terms, they call it the bhav. It's like the feeling, like the energy of it.
Sure. Yeah. That's amazing. Do you know much about the history of like fermented foods? Because you're saying like our ancestors, that was very commonplace, whereas now, you know, a lot of people don't eat fermented foods. I know, actually in my family, like I happen to personally love them. Like I love the taste of it. Like I love kimchi, I love kombucha, like I like that stuff. And a lot of my family thinks I'm just really gross. They're like, that's just don't eat that in front of me. And like, yeah. So it's very foreign to a lot of people and they find it really repulsive. But a lot of our ancestors, that is what they ate. So do you know much about the history of it? Can you talk?
Yeah, I mean, the way that our ancestors, the reason, I mean, I think there's a couple of reasons why our ancestors created the fermentation process. And one is it just happened by mistake.
Yeah.
You know, like where they say like milk was sitting in the pouch, the cowhide pouch, and it tasted sour one day. You know, the milk went sour. It's like, oh, well, that's kefir or that's yogurt. Was that it? That's how kefir and yogurt started. You know, it was like by accident. And also that's how like a lot of the foods that are made, like some of the foods that were made from mold, you know, like from black mold, it was by mistake. You know, this Japanese man saw this moldy rice, you know, and he ate it and it was like, wow, that tastes great. That's like umami flavor. So let's create more products out of this. And but mostly our ancestors ate ferments, and especially veggies, because it would get them through the winter months. You know, you'd bury some cabbage and carrots and daikons and whatever in to the ground for several months. And then when winter came and you had nothing, no veggies growing, because they weren't getting them from Brazil like we are now.
Right.
They would uncover them and they would have this beautiful fermented sauerkraut or kimchi or fermented veggie. So it was their way of like getting them through, harsh winters. Yeah. But also I think that there was some knowledge behind plants and defense mechanisms behind plants, and how, plants really shouldn't be eaten raw or even cooked. Like they need to be broken down because of the anti-nutrients. So the anti-nutrients like the lectins, phytates, oxalates, that plants develop for defense mechanisms are broken down by the fermentation process. And I believe that our ancestors knew that somehow. They knew that fermenting dough, like fermenting wheat into a sourdough, is way better and way healthier than
way yummier too.
Yeah, way yummier.
Better
than just like a regular wheat bread. Like they didn't touch like this, hybridized wheat. They made it into fermentation and a sourdough. So yeah, so I think there's a couple of reasons, and we've moved very far away from that. Yeah. And I've had to like really re-educate people, especially when I first started my company. Now fermented foods are kind of all the rage, but 4.5, almost 5 years ago, they were scary to people. And I had to really educate and say, look, this has been in our diets for centuries,
Yeah, not new.
It's not new. And it's not new at all. And especially like we're, as an American culture, we're not used to like having fermented staples in our diet. So except for beer, I guess that's a fermented staple.
Yeah,
for Americans.
Wine is technically, yeah.
Beer and wine, yeah. Not the healthiest versions. But every single culture around the world has a staple that is a fermented food.
Yeah. What are some of the, you've experienced, personally the benefits of fermented foods. What are some of the commonplace, you were talking a lot about the gut and what it does for the gut. Can you speak a little bit about that and how it is beneficial for people?
Yeah. So it's, I would say as we age and also through the highly, highly toxic food system that we have that is literally trying to kill us. I don't know, it's part of the agenda right now. Yeah.
I'm happy to have you talk about that as well. Your thoughts on that anyway.
Yeah, it is. And it's, like, it's sad to me that people trust the governmental agencies that are supposed to be overseeing, like even USDA organic. You like, why, like we cannot trust anything that is run by the government or even overseen by the government, because there is a legit agenda out there to depopulate this world. So, and the food system is number one in that. So, it's sad. So we have to take back our health in a big way. And what were you asking me?
Talk a
Sorry,
little.
there's so much.
Yeah, I know all the tangents. I'm terrible at that. So many questions. So I was asking you if you could talk a little bit about, for people who aren't really familiar with
the gut benefits. Yeah. So I would say first and foremost, it's dysbiosis, healing dysbiosis. So dysbiosis is an imbalance in healthy bacteria to I like to call them pathogens, opportunistic bacteria. Yeah. And so basically you should have a healthy ratio. So you're always going to have a microbiome of healthy probiotics. And then you definitely still want the opportunistic or pathogens that they're not bad and they don't cause problems unless they're given an opportunity. And I really like to put it that way, because they're not things or microorganisms that you want to kill, right? They're not a problem unless the environment changes, right? And then we go back to
This is
terrain theory.
where terrain theory is relevant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's truth, because like, for instance, what we could just take C. diff, for example. So C. diff is a very, very powerful, strong, opportunistic bacteria. And I had C. diff a long time ago.
Oh.
Yeah. And, but it's said that, a third of our population is walking around with Clostridium difficile in our microbiome, but it doesn't become active, and it actually has roles, to play. It's part of a symbiotic community, right?
Sure.
When everything's in balance, and when there's all the checks and balances are perfect in our microbiome, the Clostridium difficile is fine, like quiet, But as soon as you throw some antibiotics in there, or, glyphosate or toxicity or whatever it is, negative thoughts, you could tip the balance to having the pathogens, and the C. diff especially, to then take the opportunity to run amok. So, so then it becomes the bad guy. But, he or she, whatever the bacteria is, it is not the thing to kill. The intention is to bring the gut back into balance. And you do that by ingesting, fermented foods and some other things, but mainly wild fermented foods. When you consume wild fermented foods, you are consuming living bacteria that will rebalance the gut, so that you don't have the pathogens outnumbering, then you have the probiotics outnumbering the pathogens.
Wow. Yeah. And that's really what so many people, especially I think Americans, more so than even the rest of the world, deal with dysbiosis.
Yeah. And a leaky gut. So there's the dysbiosis almost always lends itself to a leaky gut, and leaky gut is where the tight junctions in the wall of the intestine start to open a little wider than they're supposed to. And so they start to allow
intestinal permeability.
Yeah. So they start to allow larger particles through into the bloodstream. And once things get into the bloodstream, then the immune system kicks up, the nervous system kicks up, like everything's in, emergency mode. Right. And a lot of people are in emergency mode chronically.
Yeah.
So that's when fermented foods play a role too, is healing the dysbiosis, which then also heals the leaky gut, so that you're not having these emergency situations anymore.
Wow. So in a way, some of these chronic conditions are a constant emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would say
dealing with the emergency flare-up situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I would say if everyone healed their leaky gut, we wouldn't have nearly as much chronic illness as we do now. I mean, if at all. But I think a lot of it stems from a leaky gut and systemic inflammatory attack, and that chronic inflammation then becomes metabolic syndrome, and then the metabolic syndrome becomes like this fight or flight, and it's just like this whole downstream of events happens after you have this like chronic long-term dysbiosis and leaky gut. I truly believe that leaky gut is and dysbiosis is the foundation of everything that we see in the world in terms of illness and disease.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's like everything stems from the gut. And then if the gut is leaky, even it's interesting to think of this, because all autoimmune diseases are have a foundation of leaky gut, right? So they all, all autoimmune diseases. Yep. And it's interesting because if you think of what an autoimmune disease is, it's the body attacking. I don't like to use this, but this is what the medical, people say, the body attacking itself. right? So if the body is turning in on itself, right? It's turning on itself and attacking itself.
Sure.
What is it doing? It's not recognizing itself. And so then you have an autoimmune disease where you have a leaky gut. So you have the boundaries, right? It's all about boundaries, emotional
Right.
boundaries and physical boundaries. So you have the boundary of the gut that is not supposed to allow anything through it except for tiny small particles.
Sure.
And so it's a strong boundary, right? A strong emotional boundary. But if you don't recognize yourself, you don't have a strong emotional boundary. You have a leaky boundary emotionally, and
Right.
therefore you have a leaky intestinal barrier. So it's always like this mirror of the emotional and spiritual self that the physical self is mirroring.
Wow. That's so fascinating to really wrap your head around. Yeah. And then it makes a lot of sense where the parallels are and why
Mm-hmm.
there's such an emotional component to so many physical ailments.
Yeah, yeah, there is. So if we all just like really focused on our gut and healing the leaky gut, I think even like this whole whatever we want to call it that's been man-made, in the last couple of years, um,
Right.
it like wouldn't have touched, most of us if we all were, pretty sound in the biodiversity in our gut. It's just it's the foundation of everything right now.
Wow. So what
Mhm.
are some other things people can do in addition to fermented foods? Like
Fermented foods,
what
yeah.
helps to heal the dysbiosis and leaky gut?
So one thing is going outside barefoot
Ground.
and yeah, grounding. Grounding's amazing, not only to mitigate the stresses and inflammation in the body, but also to take in microorganisms from the dirt into the skin and into the bloodstream of from the feet into the rest of the body.
Mm.
So I think that's an excellent way to even like your whole body. You can lay down, if you go to the beach and you have your bikini on, you can lay down in the sand
Mhm.
and you're getting like good microorganisms. You're getting it through your mouth, through your eyes, through your ears. So that's being in nature, basically.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have to go into nature, but if you have like a little patch of grass that's not sprayed or dirt,
Yeah.
then
Not
go
so
there.
easy these days.
Yeah, yeah, non-glyphosate grass. um, so yeah, go barefoot or get naked, whichever is easier. um, and I would say getting sunshine, getting fresh air, because we're taking in microorganisms everywhere, through
Right.
every opening in our body. Another great way is through pets, animals. So petting your cats, your dog, kissing them, every way, like any animal. Horses, you can go up and like snuggle to a horse.
Oh, yeah. The fur
and
buddy.
that does, and that does wonders for our emotions too.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
So healing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. um you could always eat dirt if you wanted.
And my 5-year-old boy is like, see, mom, I told you so.
Yeah. Just mimic your children, that's all. But like it's interesting because usually I would say like eat like a diverse diet of vegetables,
Right.
but I'm not I don't subscribe to that thought process anymore because I feel like uh, most of us don't have the microbiome strong enough to actually break down vegetables. And
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Crazy.
I talk to a lot of people who are bloated and they have gas and they're eating a ton of plant-based foods.
Yeah.
And once I tell them stop
Especially
eating
people who
vegetables,
have Crohn's or anything in that family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And they're like heavy on the smoothies and the green juices and stuff like that. I feel like it takes like a very, very, very strong microbiome that can break down certain vegetables. But I think for the most part, vegetables are just not, they're not our friends, especially during a healing period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of discussion around supplements in that regard as well. A lot, especially right now, people are kind of like loading up on supplements, and a lot of people, this is not to disparage supplements. They do great things for a lot of people. But there are a lot of people whose detox pathways are not primed to handle them. And so now you have a highly inflamed system that is already clogged, kind of like a clogged drain, and you're putting more stuff into that drain, being like, oh, look, I'm going to heal the drain, except that nothing can flush out. So backing it up more.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people are experiencing that with supplements without realizing it. So now they're spending all this money and time. I mean, it takes a lot of time to swallow all those pills. Remember them every day.
But also like most of the supplements are like inorganic, isolated minerals and vitamins. And so you take like an ascorbic acid and you think you're getting vitamin C, where it's just building up in your body and creating toxicity. You're taking a zinc, but the zinc is not matched with copper or magnesium. So you're actually throwing your vitamin A off by taking an inorganic zinc, because you're throwing off the copper. And so it's like, the supplement industry it's a mess right now, because it's like multi-billion dollar, and yet they're selling you crap, stuff that's made in a lab and marketed as like a healing product.
Right.
Most people can't even take zinc. Like they get nauseous or they vomit from zinc, but a lot
of people are allergic to zinc.
Yeah, but they hear it's good for them, so they take it. But what's happening is your body's reacting to the toxicity of an isolated form of zinc. If you want zinc, then get it from animal, foods.
Totally. There's
like
also a lot of people, because of the imbalances in their systems, that there's so many cofactors that are involved in digesting, particularly minerals and enzymes and some vitamins. There's cofactors, and so if you are deficient in the cofactor, then you're not going to process whatever it is that you think you need,
Right, exactly. And it comes down to the bacteria. It always comes down to the bacteria, because whatever you take, whatever comes in through this hole,
right,
is for the bacteria first. It's not even for your human cells yet. It's all getting broken down by the enzymes and the bacteria and the fungi and the yeast, whatever's in there. So I like to say, the saying, you are what you eat. It's more like I say, you are what they eat, because like when you eat a bagel, you're not feeding you're feeding them, your microbiome, you're feeding your co-host, your ride or die in this life. Those are your bacteria. Like, treat them nice, because they are what's keeping you alive.
Right. It's so fascinating, because we as we were saying earlier in the conversation, talking about like germs and how people are so programmed to look at them as the enemy, right? We have to destroy all germs, and the reality is that it's more about the balance. There's some germs are beneficial. I mean, there was something like 9% viral DNA in our body, right? So that's a fairly large percentage of us. And the same goes for bacteria. We think of bacteria as being, like really, really dangerous and toxic. And some are, there's varying degrees, and some are actually beneficial. So
yeah. And that's why, when you have something like candida, which is like yeast overgrowth, or you have a parasite, it's the way I go about healing those things is not killing, like not taking colloidal silver or wormwood, or what are the other ones, like olive leaf extract, and what's the strong one that I'm spacing? Oregano oil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's gonna kill. But what people don't know is that that's like pharmaceutical grade.
Yeah. Oregano is an antibiotic.
It's an antibiotic, like full on. It'll kill everything.
Yeah.
So when you have candida, you want candida. We all have candida. We all have candida albicans in our microbiome. But it stays quiet and it does its job when you have other folks, around, and it's kept in check.
Right.
So what I say is, like, you don't want to like target candida, because you're going to target everything else along with it. You want to bring your gut back into balance, so that the candida just lives symbiotically. It doesn't overtake, it doesn't overgrow, and it doesn't go places where it shouldn't be.
Right.
Same thing with parasites. Yeah. It's all about it. It's all about balance. And like, when people see a piece of salmon that has a parasite in it, a person who eats that salmon, who has a really healthy, diverse microbiome, won't ever get affected by that parasite in that salmon. But a person with a dysbiotic gut and a leaky gut, who eats the same piece of salmon with that parasite, will have a major, major problem with it. It'll make you sick, diarrhea, vomiting, whatever it is. So again, it's not the parasite that is the problem. It's your environment that is the problem. And it's very true. My husband he and I are kind of opposites, because opposites attract, I guess.
Right, yeah.
But he grew up on a raw dairy farm. So his dad owns an organic raw dairy farm up in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so and his mom had like a little garden. So he like lived on milk right from the cow. Never treated, never pasteurized. His mom like picked everything from the garden and made everything homemade, as opposed to me, who literally had TV dinners all the time, who had pasteurized skim milk in my cereal.
Yeah.
fortified cereal with like disgusting vitamins, And he cannot get sick, even if he wanted to get sick.
Really?
Like, yeah, he tries. Like when I get sick, he'll like
he's like
me and slobber. Like I'm like,
sickness, please.
Yeah, he's like, give it to me. I don't want you to be sick, so just give it to me. And we like try to get him sick, and he never does.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, it's true. It's really, really true. And it, most of us aren't blessed to have grown up like Ron, but but we can always come back to it. It's never the end of the story,
Right. And we can heal through that journey.
Yeah.
Regardless of where we started.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So do you still practice occupational therapy or?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm fully into Fermenting Fairy. The only thing that I do is I do consultations, which is a little bit like occupational therapy, but no, I don't see that as my path anymore. It was never a passion. It was always like a means to lead to something else, and I didn't know what that something else was going to be.
Right. Do you feel there's anything from that training and that that has helped you and that has in a way guided you to what you're doing now?
Not really. I think my training in yoga, which was prior to occupational therapy, is a lot more impactful to what I do now. I was a yoga therapist for many years before I went to OT school. Yeah, so I was certified in Anusara yoga, and was helping people heal from like mostly orthopedic things like hurt knees and hurt backs and stuff. So I was teaching them yoga for that. But I learned a lot about the human body during that. And also it was interesting because I was teaching a lot of breathing,
Yeah.
because with yoga comes breathing, right? It's like
Yes.
comes hand in hand. And so I would start by teaching my class or private person some breathing exercises. And I remember this woman came to me and she said, you taught me this breathing, and like I've been constipated for 40 years and now I'm not constipated anymore. And
Oh,
I know. So that was like my first like introduction to how, breath can help, and like the gut, and how it's all really intertwined. And so, yeah, so I think my yoga training is way more impactful to what I do now than OT. OT school is it's kind of a joke, as most schools are.
sure, sure. The only thing though that I was, and actually they don't even do it anymore. I know very little about occupational therapy. The only thing I do know is that there's an old school occupational therapy technique for hypotonia that they don't use anymore, at least not that I'm familiar with. But my baby nurse used on me because I was born with hypotonic limbs, and
Oh,
she put me into a wet sandbox. And she would like have these, like I guess my toys or whatever, slightly out of reach so that I'd be forced to kind of stretch and,
oh.
create like the neuromuscular stimuli. And then she could see I had like a very determined personality so that I would reach for it. And it was successful. So I'm very, very grateful to her, my baby nurse, Alice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And she was
Yeah.
an OT?
And I don't believe she wasn't, she was a baby nurse, but I've talked to occupational therapists, but like I
Yeah.
said, I know very little about occupational therapy, but I've known a couple of people who were, and I've talked to them and they were like, that's a really, really old school, like they consider it an archaic technique that they don't
Uh-huh.
use anymore. I'm like, I don't know why, it was very successful for me.
That's incredible. I love that. And I mean, I knock OT school, but OT as a career
Yeah.
is it's one of the most creative, like open-ended careers. Like you can do anything in it. Like I still call myself an OT because I'm in the healing profession. So
I think that's where my question stemmed from, because I
yeah.
would see that there is like a converging kind of path.
For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, there's like you can do neuro, like you can do therapy kind of things and still be an OT. It is wide open, and that's why it's such a beautiful field to go into. And that's one of the reasons why I chose it. And I didn't choose physical therapy because I knew physical therapy is super like strict by the books.
Yeah.
And at that time, I wanted to teach yoga and I wanted to just kind of make my own path. And I knew OT was that. And it certainly was. I mean, I still have my license and I still do the continuing ed, but my continuing ed is more like, gut stuff now. So like, and it's fine. It always passes. So
Yeah.
it's really nice. Like I would say, for anyone wanting like a good career, and the schooling is like next to nothing. Like it's 2.5 years. It's not much at all.
Wow.
It's really cool because then you can develop anything out of
Wow.
it.
That's great. Because a lot of times, you're very limited. So
Yeah.
you spend all this time and money in schooling, and then your path is very narrow. But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I worked at a hospital. I worked at St. John's in Santa Monica. I'm sure
okay, yeah.
St. John's. Yeah.
You.
And even though I was a traditional occupational therapist there, I went on and I developed a sort of like a different paradigm to where I was trying to make it like Google at the hospital to where people like the caregivers, the actual employees of the hospital could come and
Right.
just like Google, like they can get their hair cut or they can have like great food or they can like get their nails done, like just actually have like a place to come and like love to work. So I created this paradigm shift that actually was passed by the CEO. And we had massages like twice a month. We had all sorts of things. We had people come and do nails. We had planting day, like where people would come and plant a garden. And
Amazing.
yeah, it was wonderful. So that was like my OT job at the hospital.
Wow, that would have been like a much more pleasant experience than I ever had at St. John's. But yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Wow. So, what would you advise people who, because you, what I think is so fascinating about your story is you have this personal healing journey, which was, really incredible. And, most people I think are very, they don't take the time to find their own process. And usually that's what's most needed. And then you also had this whole self-discovery of, becoming an entrepreneur. So what would you say for people who are embarking on one or the other? Talk a little bit about both maybe. And what would you say is like the biggest advice you could give them?
I would say going back to trust again.
Okay.
Like, whether it's you're on your own healing journey, you're trying to heal your body, or you're discovering your passions and what you want to do in life.
Yeah.
I would say like trust, like really, really trusting again is knowing that everything is going to work out in your favor all the time, like 100% of the time, if you align yourself with it. Mm-hmm. And the way that you align yourself with it is you embody it. Mm-hmm. So whatever that is, if you don't want to be sick anymore, embody the person that you envision not sick anymore. If you want to be an entrepreneur and have your own business, embody the person who's like, the boss and comes into the office and has all these people to oversee. And, like really like Joe Dispenza says, like, get it into your body. And it's so true, because when I did that, when I was healing from Crohn's, I would have a lot of meditations and just a lot of quiet time where I would envision myself before I had the disease, where I was, going for runs and walking down to the beach and swimming in the ocean, which were all things that I couldn't do anymore because I was sick. But I would remember that because I would have these memories, and then I would feel myself and envision and visualize myself doing that again. Wow. And I would get it in my body. Like I would see myself like running a race again and just be, yeah, I did it, like, yay. Or, like if you want to be an influencer on Instagram and you have like 1,000 followers, but you want 50,000 followers. And, what does that feel like to you to have, 50 messages to wake up to, and you have to answer all of them? And like, what does that feel like to really embody that and trust that once you align yourself to it, it's already written. Like it's already like your story is already written. It's just
what Jordan Peterson calls future authorization. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Future authorization. Exactly.
Amazing. Yeah. And the power of visualization is just astronomical. And it's not easy. This is what people don't, I don't think people fathom that. They think, oh, you just sit and visualize like everything being perfect. But I remember as a kid, I was a gymnast growing up as well. And we would be told, which I think was so incredible that, I feel really blessed that I had coaches that even suggested this, but they would tell us to visualize ourselves doing the routine perfectly. Yeah. And I was always so stupefied by the fact that it was so difficult to envision a perfect routine. Like I would get to that point where in the routine, I don't know, for me at least, I always had like, in every routine, there was always like that moment that was difficult, like a spot where I would mess up a lot, or
sure.
Right.
Like a particular move. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Like, or a place where I would stumble, or a move that, I would not succeed.
Right.
So I would visualize myself doing it, and I would mess up at that spot. And it was so hard for me to reprogram myself to actually visualize doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
It was so easy to see myself messing up at that point.
Yes,
I
exactly.
think, right?
That's where the work is, that's really where the work is. Like for me right now, I'm like, we're working on getting me pregnant.
Oh,
And so I've been doing a lot of visualization and I feel it in my body. And I also, where I'm getting stuck is this is so funny. I can't believe I'm saying this on a podcast, but where I'm getting stuck is like the morning sickness thing. That's like a fear of mine. Like, I don't want to be sick, and so like
dealt with.
yeah, I see myself like as a very healthy pregnant woman. And then where I get stuck is like, I see myself like vomiting a lot and I'm like, oh no, I'm like, nope. But see, that's where, like, when that happens, it's the thought that's trying to throw me off. Yeah. And then I just say, nope, I rewrite the story right then.
Yes. Yes. And not all women have morning sickness.
Right.
I hear about it, but it's not the norm for everyone. So it's not the norm for every pregnancy. Some women will have it for, one pregnancy and not at all for another,
Right. And that's what we have to tell ourselves is like, again, like if you're struggling to heal from, let's just say Crohn's, and the doctor told you that no one has ever healed without medication, then that's going to be in your head. And just like the morning sickness thing, all I see are people like getting sick when they're pregnant, but that's only because that's what people show,
right?
But there's always other stories. Like there are people, countless people who have healed from Crohn's without medication. There's countless women who have never had, morning sickness.
Totally.
So we tend to go with the thing that is, that's our sticking point. And that's the work. Like that's the work that right there, that's the gold. And then we just rewrite the story and, we ended up healing our, yeah.
Oh, well, I wish you the best. That's amazing. Yeah, definitely keep visualizing it being smooth and easy. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now that I put it out there, now it's only going to be.
You just released that. So yeah.
But, visualization's really key for anyone and everyone. Like if you want to manifest, you want more money in life, what does it feel like to have more money? What does that look like to you? So
yeah. And I think another really interesting, you talked about this earlier, but I think it's really relevant to bring up at this point is what is it that you're holding on to that's impeding you and why? Because a lot of people will say things like, I want more money, right? But what is holding you back? What would that really look like? Because nothing is ever, there's two sides to every coin, right? So with more money, there's typically more responsibility, there's more obligations, there's more pressure, there's a lot of things that people don't necessarily want that come with having more. And there, whether consciously or not, people may be blocking themselves from having, whether it's financial success, whatever success it is, because, there's things that come with it that they might not want to own.
Yeah, exactly.
They need to be really honest with that. Is that something they're willing to accept or let go of some of the, things that they're gaining from not achieving whatever it is.
Right.
Like you with healing yourself, you were worried that you wouldn't have that love and the attention that you're getting from being sick.
Yeah. And I think it's always important to keep in mind that whatever joy you get out of something, there's always the flip side. Like there's, we have to have that dichotomy in the world because it can't all be like, cherry blossoms and like, dandelions and, like things, I mean,
appreciate them.
It makes us, love what we love more. So that's why, being sick is a gift because not only are you going to know more about yourself, but you're going to appreciate the times when you're healthy.
Right.
You know, I know people who have never gotten sick, like my husband, he's one of them. He doesn't know what it's like to suffer in his body. I do. And so there's a different way that he interacts, you know, with people who are sick. And there's a different way that I interact with people who are sick. I have a lot of compassion because I've been there. I mean, he's beautiful and nice about it, but the compassion piece it's lacking because he's never really experienced it. So it's you know, being sick is a gift, you know, because there's so many lessons and there's so many ways to grow from it in a beautiful way.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, my
I was going to say the light is so beautiful right at that point.
yes, the sun. I have one more question you touched on a little bit that I would love you to maybe expound on a bit. You were talking about big food and the big food industry, and maybe some of the nefarious intentions behind it. Can you speak a little bit to what are some of the things that people can look for so that they can, I guess, maybe avert some of the insidiousness of big food industries?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like even reading a label is not that helpful anymore, because what you see on the nutrition panel, which is like where they say the fat and the carbs and all the macros and stuff, it's pretty much BS. I mean, it is like, I mean, the sugar content, pretty much, I would love for you guys to know that companies can make that up and get away with it. So
well, there's also, you know, what they just have to meet certain standards. So, you know, like for something to be organic, it only has to be 90%. That doesn't mean that it's all the ingredients are organic.
right.
And now obviously 90% is better than 0%. You know, I don't want to demonize things, you know, when something could be better than not, but
Yeah.
it's still misleading for people, because
Yeah.
you're really looking for something organic, you expect it to be organic. You don't expect it to be personally organic, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's true. There are different levels of organic certification, but so you can get like 100% organic certification, but unfortunately that's not denoted in the actual label. So my label that's 100% organic could look exactly the same, you know, from a company that only has 90% organic ingredients. So, I mean, I definitely think organic is important. I don't think, like in the beginning of forming my company, I thought the certification of organic was really important. I don't think that anymore, because I have experienced like the ridiculousness of it, meaning that they don't do basically shit, you know, in terms of enforcing organic. And I know because I'm friends with some of these companies that are not organic, but have the organic stamp, because they can fudge it. It's super easy to fudge. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of advice in terms of like how to see through things and get high quality products. But I would say, you know, don't let a lot of your diet come from packaged goods. You know, that's key. Like if you're eating a lot of packaged goods, then you're probably ingesting a lot of things that you shouldn't be ingesting that maybe aren't even on the label. So, you know, if you're vegan, vegetarian, get your stuff, you know, get your produce, like make it all like as close to nature as possible. If you eat meat, then you're shopping straight from the farmer. And if you do consume like some packaged goods, just make sure that I would say small companies are the best, even though they're not always like have the most integrity, but they're more likely to have an integrity than the larger companies.
Right.
And I would also recommend, so if it doesn't have the stamp of USDA certified, like now, so we used to have the certified organic sticker right here.
Right.
But we took that off because we're a private association now.
Right.
And so we're not interacting with any government agency. So, but we're still fully organic. So you'll see everything's organic in our ingredients. So that's what you want to look for, is everything, all the ingredients say organic. And the non-GMO label is, you know, it doesn't have a lot of integrity to it. There's, you can still be eating something that was grown with sewage sludge and have it be non-GMO.
Wow.
Yeah, non-GMO means nothing right now, and it's a trick that a lot of companies play on people, and it's sad because a lot of these companies have the money to get organic ingredients. They just refuse, and then they slap a non-GMO label on it, and they think that it's going to trick the consumer, which it does for the most part. But I think for your listeners, if something is just non-GMO and not organic, I wouldn't even touch it. I wouldn't go near it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and then just read your ingredients. Like, things should be really simple. If you're buying a sourdough bread from the health food store, it should just be yeast, salt, and water, and that's it.
Right.
If it has, it should have like the flour, but if it has added yeast, you don't want it. If it has added citric acid, you don't want it. Any kind of stabilizer, you don't want it. And look at the sourdough bread that's in the health food store. It's complete total crap because people are skipping fermentation processes. They're skipping steps. They're not even fermenting it. They're just adding yeast to it.
Wow.
So yeah, read the ingredients. Super important to read ingredients, and try to keep things as simple as possible if you're buying packaged products.
Good advice. Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah.
I'm not the most optimistic with this. Like, I won't say like, oh, the label is, it's just because I know I'm behind the scenes. I've befriended many companies out there, and I know what they're up to. So it's not a pretty picture.
Oh dear. Well, hopefully there will be more independent, companies and people within the community who are really trying to restore some,
Yeah.
to the
I think there will be a lot of companies coming up now who recognize, just recognize how toxic the food system is right now, especially over the last couple of years that we've, a lot of things have been uncovered. A lot of lies have been uncovered over the last couple of years. So, there's going to be more and more people stepping in and saying, we need to change this.
Yeah. That is really my hope. The Great Awakening will combat the Great Reset. That's my hope. So
yeah.
And I do think I see a lot more people really waking up to the lies, because the lies are just becoming so glaringly obvious, and there's so much hypocrisy that it's kind of hard to reconcile for a lot of people. So I'm really hoping that is going to be a silver lining, and that more people will take some personal responsibility. And that, I think health is one of the places where people really can do that. That's one of the reasons why, I do these segments, because I think, the more we can educate people, then it's up to them. But if people don't have the information, then, you don't have, there's not much they can do. And most people, I think, there's certainly, we live in a very fast-paced society where a lot of people do want the instant gratification, and they don't have the interest, but there are a lot of people who, if they knew, would, and so I think that if we can arm people with information to help themselves, then we will have more personal sovereignty, and more healthy people means less people dependent on, big institutions in the government. So I support that.
Yeah. It's always coming back home. Like, that's the moral of our life, right? It's just coming back home to who we are, and not thinking anyone is going to take care of us or save us, because they're not,
Yeah. And that is, I think that's a really hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. Myself included. I think, there is a sense of security in thinking that we're, somehow going to be rescued. And I think there is also a sense of it's much easier to point a finger outward and then to blame others for whatever personal shortcomings or failures we may have. And, if we have to rely on ourselves to take care of ourselves and to fulfill ourselves, then we don't get that cop out. So
yeah, exactly.
That's not always ideal in certain moments.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's something that most people can relate to. And I think that's where a lot of it stems from. So, but ultimately the flip side of that, right, because there's the two sides to each of it, is then we get to take, so much pride in having been able to find our own personal fulfillment and, and having a deeper spiritual connection as well. So those two are going to be very rewarding when we do put stock in them. So.
Right. Yeah. It's freedom, but freedom in healing ourselves, like in every way possible, because, right now I think a lot of us feel suppressed but we didn't know that we felt suppressed, and we didn't know that we felt like kind of enslaved to the system, but breaking away from, and unlearning what we've spent
programming.
Programming, for 40 years or so, some even longer.
Totally.
It is just like the ultimate feeling of like empowerment and freedom, and there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it.
I think that's so true. So beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you would like to add, leave us with, and definitely tell everybody where they can find you and find your awesome products?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Courtney. Thank you for using your voice and your platform. And, not many people are brave enough to come out, and talk truth and have someone like me who's, brings up controversial topics on as a guest. And it's very courageous and brave of you. And thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Likewise. This was such a pleasure. And I've learned so much from you. So I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Yeah. So you can find me fermentingfairy.com. That's my website. And Instagram is fermenting.fairy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. Welcome. Yeah. Well, we will do it again.
I'd love to. Yeah.